Everybody, it's Jim from Sprague Woodturning. This week we're going to take some of this curly maple that I've rescued from my firewood pile, combine it with some awesome designer epoxy to make a really cool vase.
So what we have here is maple, and this is actually out of my firewood pile, and I know it might be a little hard to see, but it is full of curl. Lots of curl. There's a good example of it right there. So, I couldn't burn this. Do you have that addiction that I have when you're doing firewood, that you actually look through every piece to see if you can use it? Well, I certainly do. I've cut these to the bucket length already, but this is what I did. You can see I measured the weight of this and then actually when it stopped, and this is February of last year, so it's been in my kiln a long time. So it is good and dry. I just haven't kneaded it, but it is certainly quite a gnarly piece of wood along with the other ones too. So first order of business is to get all this bark off, and then we can do our casting. And I'm not exactly sure what this is going to be at this point. It may be an open vase. It might even be a lamp base. I don't know. Maybe a hollow form. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's get these pieces cleaned up, and then we can mix up some resin.
So before we get too deeply into this, I'd like to thank you for stopping by to check out my videos. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this is firewood and it comes from my firewood pile. We burn wood in the house and in my workshop. So before we can do any casting, got to get rid of all this bark. You'll also see me later on where I'll score up the surface of this to make sure that there's no adhesion issues with the resin, because that's a very important part of it as well. I do find that a lot of times, especially on the bark side of these castings, it's not really so much an issue on the inside, but on the bark side, when you strip the bark off, it can actually be really smooth. So it's important to score that up so that you can actually give the resin a good tooth for it to bond to. So first things first, I'm just going to use a brass brush to clean away the bulk of the material that you see here. And then you'll see me switch out to the 3.5-inch stipple disc from sandpaper.ca mounted in the Jacob's chuck. And that will, yeah, so there's a really good, that's got some strong curl in it. So here I'm using the 3.5-inch stipple disc, and that's just going to make sure that that resin's really got a strong bonding surface. If you don't do this, you run the risk of your project falling apart. So it's really important to actually score up the surface so you don't run into those issues. I should also mention that I'm using 60 grit to achieve this.
It's resin time.
This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. This is going to be one of the deepest castings I've done, so it's important to use a deep casting epoxy to achieve that. I've also decided this week to use satin white gray. We haven't used that on the channel yet, so I thought that was going to be kind of a cool, neat look. And along with that, I want to use lots of mother of pearl. Well, not lots. There's probably about a quarter of a teaspoon in each batch that I mix up. So that'll give us lots of pearl effect in the final finished resin.
All right, so this is probably one of 3, possibly 4 of these that we'll have to mix, but we'll see. Yep, I'd say it's going to take at least 3. Bring it back when I've got the next one done. Here's the second one. Hmm. 3 might do it. Here's number 3. May have to throw Dwayne on here. We'll have to see. Be surprised if I don't have to. Well, that's 4 liters. Yeah, it is starting to float. Gotta get Dwayne. All right, I'm gonna mix up a little bit more because that ain't enough. All right, so this is another 1.5 liters. So that took 6 liters. Wow. So I think that might be the deepest pour that I've done to date. And it is going to be, hopefully, very impressive. Now, I'm sure that this level is going to drop off at least an inch and a half. But that's all right. This is a very deep casting. And I will not be surprised if this thermal cracks because that's 6 liters of resin in a small container. But we'll see. And if it does, then well, we know how to correct that now too. All right, well, I'm going to throw this in the pressure pot. See you guys in 3 days. Bet you this is heavy. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This is 3 days later, so this actually come out of the, as you can see, it come out of the bucket quite easily. And I know that a lot of people are entertained to see me struggle to get these out, so sorry to disappoint this week, but don't worry, there's always next week. So we have a natural center on the bottom where the bucket is, so it leaves an indent, so that's easy to find. On the top, instead of trying to mount that on the bandsaw somehow and cut that top material away, I decided to just grind it down with a cut saw sander and then fine center and then mount it on the lathe. Now, one thing you may notice, there was some of the footage is yellowing, and what that is, it's taken me a little while to figure this out. So it's cold in my workshop right now. Right now, it's at nighttime. It's dipping down to sometimes minus 10 degrees Celsius. So and that's not even we're not even really truly into winter here yet. So I found that I have to let my camera warm up, and so let it basically run for about 10-15 minutes before I even think about using it, because you can see where the color just shifted right there. So I apologize for that. So this is very standard. We're just got it mounted between centers. I'm looking at the resin. I'm going, yeah, this is pretty cool. I was a little concerned about the way that it looked, but in the end, it's certainly, and I mean color wise, by adding that mother of pearl, it really lightened that inlay, or sorry, not the inlay, the resin. So, that's kind of one of those things where you're sacrificing the true look of the pigment to get the pearl effect. So here I'm just going to clean off the very top of this with the gouge. Again, there's hardly any resin here, so the gouge is a good choice for that. But for the most part, to do the majority of the turning on this piece, I switched to the Hercules, and that's the large Hercules, the number 3. And so, it's my go-to tool when I'm working on resin and really hard material such as this. The goal right now is to actually get rid of any excess resin that's sitting on top of the wood. I do leave a little bit in one particular area, but for the most part, I get rid of any excess resin. Ideally, these pieces would have fit better on the outside of the bucket, and then possibly a spacer would have been able to go in between them, but it just didn't happen. So, at this stage, I'm still really undecided as to what I'm going to do. I have determined basically by now what's going to be up and what's going to be down, but really at this point, that's about all I know. So just an observation that I've made over the years, I do find that when it comes to hard maple, if you're looking for bird's eye or if you're looking for a really tight curly grain, then that's usually produced by hard maple. While I find that the soft maples produce more burls, hard maples will produce burls as well. And if you don't know what I mean by a burl, if you look at the side of a tree and there's a big lump on the side of it, that's a burl as a general rule. It could be a knot grow-over, but in most cases, if it just looks like a equally round, full bump on the side, then it's usually a burl. But I do find that soft maples produce more burls than hard maples, but hard maples certainly do produce them. I will say that when you do get a hard maple burl, it typically has a lot more figurative grain in it than soft maple does. But it's just an observation over the years. By all means, please chime in and tell me your experiences on that regard as well. But it's if you're looking for like a waterfall type grain, that typically comes from soft maple here anyway. But it'd be interesting to hear if it's the same way in other parts of the world. So other common names when I'm talking about soft maple, I'm referring to big leaf maple, box elder burl or Manitoba maple, red maple, silver maple. Silver maples are really soft maple to work with, but it can produce some really nice figure as well. But when I refer to hard maple, I'm referring to sugar maple and rock maple. And the sugar maple, of course, is the tree that is typically tapped for maple syrup.
All right, so it's actually been a couple of days. I had some stuff on the go, so this is the first time getting back to it. And the more I've been thinking about this piece over the last couple of days, and I'm not real happy with the way that essentially where the pith was in these pieces of firewood was. So, It's kind of ugly looking. And of course, I was going to make a hollow form with this, and I just it's not doing it for me. So this is again design on the fly, just because you've got maybe a concept in your head that it doesn't work out. So be it. So I'm going to change this up. I'm going to make this into a deep bowl. This is probably around 8 inches deep, and you could probably still call it a vase if you want to. That way we'll be able to finish the inside, and it'll look really sharp as well. I just can't. I don't know, this ugliness here. I'm not a real fan of this. Ordinarily, a lot of this stuff is really nice with resin, but it's just not doing it for me. So the other thing too is I was thinking that I might be able to get a core out of this, but it's only 7 inches across. I don't even know if it's that. Yeah, it's about 7.5 inches across. So that's too small for me to try and do any core. I thought maybe I might be able to get a little core out of here, but that's not going to work either. So we'll drill this out and get it all taken away on the inside.
With my number one knife set in my coring tool, I probably could have got a core out of this. The problem with it is this is a very deep piece, and in order to core anything like this, you really should be using tailstock support. So I was just fearful that if I went for the core and I wasn't able to support this, yeah, I could have set up my steady rest, but that involves just so much work. And to me, uh, it was kind of an ugly part of the turning, so it wasn't really lost to me, to be quite honest with you. I know there's going to be some people wonder why I didn't core, and that's why. I was just really worried about destroying the actual piece that we're really going for, the money piece, if you will, and not being able to support it properly was the main reason why I didn't go for it.
If you're curious, that is a 3-inch bit. And that's really the first time I've been able to use it successfully without having some severe vibration. So glad to see that I could finally use it for something.
In the past, when I tried to use that 3-inch bit, I was just getting a ton of vibration, and I was really worried that I was going to rip. I think that I've showed it on the channel here, and I abandoned the idea because it was just too much vibration, and I was really worried about the piece going across the shop. So that's kind of why I shied away from it. So I thought that I would try it this time. I knew that this was going to be a bugger to get the center out because it is hard. This material is really, really hard, and so I was trying to make it easier on my body when we moved outboard. Speaking of outboard, for the new people, the reason why I turned on the outboard end of this is a 20-inch general, and it has left-hand threads on the outboard end. I'm left-handed, so it's more comfortable for me to turn on the outboard end of the lathe than it is to turn over the bed of the lathe. So that's the main reason why I like working outboard. To be honest with you, if I was right-handed and I had the capability of working outboard on a right-handed normal threads on a lathe, I would do that because you don't have a bed in your way. You can stand right in front of the work, and it is by far the most comfortable way that I've found to do turning. So if your lathe does have the capability of you turning outboard, I would highly recommend it. It will be a lot easier on your body, and you'll find it a lot more comfortable. Because we're so far off of the headstock, I mean, you can hear the vibration that I'm getting. And I knew that this was going to be an issue. It's just something that you're really just going to have to put up with. I do keep checking the chuck to make sure that it's not coming loose, because that is certainly the last thing you want to see happen. So, once I get a little further down into the bowl, that for the most part goes away. But until you get there, it's a lot of vibration. But it is what it is. That there's really no. You could put a bowl steady, and I've been debating on buying one. The problem is that the the bed on the outboard end of this lathe isn't real long, so I don't know how big of a benefit that's going to be to me. It might be more of a hindrance because I don't know if I'll be able to move my banjo in and out to make sure that, it's not going to be in the way. So, I cut out a ton of footage here because it was just very repetitive and I figured it was just best to cut it out.
Let me tell you something right now. This is probably the hardest stuff I've worked with so far. I know that when we did the mesquite bowl, I thought that was hard, but this is all hard maple end grain, and it is tough. My hands are just vibrating from this. So I probably should have left it inboard and used the hollowing rig to do this. Probably be easier on my body, but we'll get it eventually. But man, is it ever hard? It's taken forever. To give you an idea that, just to get this far inside here has probably been over an hour. It's just so hard to do. Anyway, just got to let my hand stop vibrating there for a minute and then we'll get back to it.
I do have a pair of weightlifting gloves and they have padded palms and they're good to wear when it comes to work like this in dealing with vibration. I couldn't find them. I don't know what I did with them. They're in my shop somewhere, but my shop right now is incredibly messy. So that needs a definite good cleaning and stuff put away. I've just got stuff laying everywhere. I know I'm not alone. I watch some YouTube channels and I look in the background and go, oh, okay, so I guess that a lot of people like to leave things out so you know exactly where it is. If I clean up, I'm not going to have any idea where it is. So that's what I'm sticking with anyway. You may have noticed that I switched back to the gouge just to clean or get the majority of the material cleaned away at the very base, and then I switched back to the Hercules just to finish it off. Now this is a tool that I made a long time ago, and I believe that it's either 7/8 or 1-inch bar, and as you can see there's an outrigger welded on the right hand side of it, and I drilled a hole in the very end of it, and it accepts a high-speed steel cutter and then I put in a couple of set screws to hold it in place. It's a very simple, basic tool, but it's really comfortable to use when you're working on really deep work like this. And I forgot to actually show it at the end of this video. So if I think about it, I will show it in the next video and I'll give you the exact specs on it if you're curious and you want to make one yourself. It was actually quite easy to make. Anyway, it's really comfortable to use when you're working on really deep pieces like this, and certainly easier on your body than trying to go way in there deep with either the Hercules or the gouge because it's very uncomfortable to work that far off the tool rest. Finally, on to sanding. I think in order to take the inside of this out and get it ready for sanding was probably 2.5 hours. So, and again, when I was sanding this piece, I used a lot of sandpaper like I did with the mesquite bowl. So, it just goes to show you that, the harder the wood is, you can be rest assured that you're going to be using a lot more sandpaper when you're sanding it back. And again, the lower grits are the most important grits as far as getting rid of any little bits of tear out and lumps and bumps. So the 60 and the 800 are typically what I use to do that. And then it's usually smooth sailing after that. And this piece was sanded from from 60 to 800. On to buffing, this is the Triple E buffing compound from the Be All buffing system. And that is the last step that I use prior to putting on any finish. Well, I should say second last. Last step is to use some denatured alcohol to clean the surface prior to the first coat of finish going on, which of course is the best part.
All right, so this week we're going to be going with Waterlux Original VOC Gloss.
There's been a few people inquiring as to what I'm using to apply the finishes, and you can use old t-shirt material, preferably the stuff that's worn out is better. I personally find the rag that I'm using here comes from a company called Ardec. They're in the province of Quebec. You can also get rags from Lee Valley that are supposedly lint free as well. As far as the U.S. and the rest of the world, sorry, I can't help you out.
Well, at some point when I was putting the finish on, my camera died. Look at that curl. It's actually better on the inside than it is on the outside. But the resin, wow. I'll be honest with you, when I first seen this, I was like, man, kind of looks like body filler. I don't know if it's going to be nice, but it certainly is. Lots of character in this piece. What do you think? See you tomorrow for the second coat.
So this is geared more towards the new people. So between each coat, I buff again with the Triple E buffing compound. And you'll note that I had a smaller buffing pad. So I don't throw away my buffing pads as they wear out and get smaller, because if you have a smaller buffing pad, you can go all the way into the base on a piece like this. Sometimes you have to shut it off and work on specific areas, but this is the finishing process that I use. I don't buff for the last coat. I just wipe it on and let it sit.
Well, good morning. It is the second coat of Waterlux Original VOC Gloss.
As far as the application is concerned, you'll see me, I load up the rag pretty heavily with it. It is important that you don't get too much on there. And when I pour the finish onto the rag and I go back to the bowl, I don't start where I stopped. I come up the bowl, then back and blend it in.
All right, there's the second coat. Pretty awesome stuff. I'll say it's quite heavy with this chuck. Inside's right full of character as well. All right, well, if there is a third coat, I will do it the same, and we'll see at the end when we're doing the foot. It's bottom day.
So it did in fact take 3 coats and not 2. I did get some stuff embedded in the finish, so that's why I put on the third. Other than that, it probably would have been okay. Now, this here is over 12 inches hanging off the end of the lathe here, and I was taking really light cuts, but it was getting some pretty nasty vibration. So I thought that I would try this. I put the lathe in reverse and got the Cutsall sander out, and it nibbled away that stuff perfectly. Then I was just able to take a few finishing cuts and sand it up, and it was great. All right, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let's finish this up.
All right, let's have a last little look at this beauty vase. I'm going to call this a vase. It's a little too deep for a bowl. Adding that extra mother of pearl in with that resin just really gives you those fantastic figures. The curly maple is absolutely awesome as well. There's some more of that just beautiful resin. Same thing there. Not bad for firewood, I must say. Inside, it might even be better, to be honest with you. Another reason why I'm happy with the decision to turn this into this tall vase, because having a hollow form, you certainly wouldn't be able to see what's going on in there. So I mean, it's really cool as well in there. And here is the base itself. As you can see, there's no finish on it, so that'll take 3 coats of finish for sure. And the reason for that is because it's all in grain, so it's going to really soak up that finish. The dimensions on this piece at its widest point here is 9 inches and 7.5 inches tall. And I think it's got a about 5/8 thick, I think is what this piece is. I like my beefy turnings, people, you know that. Anyway, and 5 pounds 9 ounces is what this weighs. So it's pretty hefty for its size. But I really like it, and it was an awesome, fun thing to do. I'm going to set this down. So if you're looking for decent logs, see if there's any firewood producers in your area. What I've done in the past is I've gone down to the yard and had a look at what, usually they've got a big stack of logs there. And so I would take some spray paint with me and just hit the ends of logs that I wanted. And then as they got to them, they would pull them out and set them aside. And once they had a full load, then they would call me and I would come and get them. No, now in this area, a cord of firewood, a full cord of firewood is anywhere from $300 to $350 delivered. Prices may have gone up a little bit just because of the cost of gas. But, if you're willing to pay them those kinds of prices and they don't have to run them logs through their firewood processing mill, then, it's a no-brainer. They'll probably do that for you, no problem at all. It's a little bit of a pain to have logs laying around, but, you can work out a deal, and, by far that's going to give you a lot of bang for your buck. If you went down and bought 3 full bush cords of logs, I mean, that's enough for a professional turner probably for a year. So that'll give you an idea. I know that they're not everywhere, but hey, if you're in an area where it's cold like it is here, then that's certainly an option for you. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the 3-gallon giveaway kit at 80,000. And please just put designer epoxy, 2 words, don't combine them. And please watch your spelling, because I know there's a bunch of spelling that hasn't been right. So I know that the YouTube comment picker won't pick those up. No hashtags, no periods, no nothing, just designer epoxy all by itself. And that way you're sure to be entered into the draw for the picker to be able to pick it. This piece, as it stands right now, is for sale, and I also have the spaceship hollow form. That hasn't sold yet either, so we're probably still okay to get things mailed out, but we're starting to run out of time as far as getting stuff mailed out for Christmas. But if you're interested, send me an email, spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will basically disclose the price, what it is, and then hopefully we can get that mailed out to you. What else? Vuv Media has redone a bunch of my YouTube videos, and now they're up and running on my Facebook business site, Sprague Woodturning, on my business Facebook site. So if you got some time, head over and check those out. What they've basically done is taken a 50-minute video and condensed it down into 3 minutes. So it's fast and furious. I know that the people that want to watch these really quick videos, that would certainly be a place to view those videos. And of course, when you're on there, if you can see it in your hearts to share those videos, that would be awesome as well. So I would really appreciate that. Next week, we're going to do a Christmas themed project. And so far, I've had to redo it once already. So that tells you how great it's going. So come on back for that. I think that I've got one part of it figured out, but anyway, it's something I've never done before, and I don't think I've ever seen it being done here on YouTube either. So come on back for that. Hopefully it works. All right, well, that's it. Again, we're going to be doing a draw at 80,000 for a bowl, so please leave a comment down below as well for that. And things have slowed down a little bit. I know we're going into Christmas and people are busy, so I'm getting between 50 to 100 subscribers a day, so that's a little slower than it's been, but going into Christmas, I fully understand that. Things will probably pick up in the new year, so no big deal. We'll get there eventually. All right, well, that's it. Till next week, take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell, and please share my videos with not my friends, your friends. And that's the best way for me to build my subscriber base here on YouTube, and I would really appreciate it. All right, we'll see you next week.